Welcome back to the second part of Module 1. This covers Chapter 4, Punctuation and Syllabification. It'll be a much shorter instructional video, but again, my suggestion is to please have your study guide printout with you and to follow along in the study guide, the instructional video as we go from slide to slide. In terms of punctuation, there's actually four main punctuation marks used in the typical Greek sentence. These include the comma, and you can see where it's positioned here relative to the Greek word theos, which means God. This raised period, the period, which is located typically where we would expect the period to be. And the comma and the period function in Greek in the same way that it does in English. Two punctuation marks that are different that you might not expect is what we call the raised dot. And this raised dot or raised period functions as a semicolon in Greek, and it's a very common punctuation mark you see often. And then what looks like a semicolon in English actually functions as a question mark in Greek. So those are the four punctuation marks: the comma, the period, the Greek semicolon, which is a raised dot, and the Greek question mark, which looks like a semicolon in English. Another interesting punctuation mark is what we call an apostrophe, which occurs when letters drop out when words combine. So the process where words might combine is called elision, and you can think of elision as a collision between two words. And so in this case, in the picture, we have a patu, which is a pa, which is the Greek word from, and then we have the word emu, which is the Greek word for me. So together, this means from me. But often what happens is that if we have two short vowels, so here's a short vowel, the omicron, and here's a short vowel, the epsilon. When two short vowels come next to each other, often Greek contracts the words together so that they're easier to pronounce. So the process of elision often happens in order to allow for an easier pronunciation of words. So instead of saying a pa, a mu, the omicron actually drops out and is replaced by this apostrophe. And this apostrophe signals that there has been a drop in the letter. And together you would read this as epemu. So you could read this as if it was one word. There are two words, but with the dropping out of the omicron, it really reads very smoothly as epemu, rather than separate words up here, apa and mu. When you drop the omicron through the process of elision, and you had to signal whenever something gets dropped, Greek wants to somehow footnote it or punctuate where the letter was dropped. And here you have an apostrophe, and you would pronounce this together as epemu, as if it was one word. And that's what elision is. And you'll see this happen in Greek. For example, let me give you another one. Kago. See, there's an apostrophe here. And usually you think that, well, that looks awfully like a smooth breathing mark, but it's not, because we know that breathing marks only occur when vowels begin a word. Here we have something that looks like a breathing mark, but it's an apostrophe that's above a vowel, but it's not the vowel is not the first letter of a word. So this is actually another example of elision, where the Greek word kai and the the Greek word ego. So this is originally it was kai ego, and I. This literally means and I. But in order to say this more smoothly, rather than kai ego, they say kago. So this is kago. And what happened is that the iota dropped out, the epsilon dropped out, and to show that something was dropping out, you have this apostrophe showing up. There are 3 accents found in Greek, and you and there and so and the accent used to indicate intonation and pronunciation in the classical period. But by the time we reach the Greek in the New Testament period, which is what we call Koine or Common Greek, the functions of actions is purely for where the stress is. And there are 3 types. There's an acute accent, which is signaled that looks like this. There's a grave accent that looks like this. And there's a circumflex accent, and it can be written as like a little like an umbrella, or sometimes you see a circumflex written like this. So I'll put the alpha here so you can see how it's used. And this indicates what syllable is stressed in the word. Now, for the purposes of the class, I'm reading this right here. You only need to be aware of the accent on the lexical form and be mindful of the. For purposes of class, only be aware of the accent, especially when it occurs in the dictionary form, because you want to know how to pronounce words correctly. So where do you put the stress? So you're aware of accents for where you put the stress in your pronunciation of a word. If, for example, if I wrote this, I didn't quite write this well. Okay, here we go. So if I put the stress at the end, it'd be agape, but that's not the right pronunciation. The stress is not here. It's actually here. So it's agape, agape. So the stress does help you pronounce the words correctly, but that's really the only purpose that we need to worry about. When you spell words, though, it's very important that you include the breathing marks. So without the breathing mark, technically you have not spelled the word correctly. So make sure that on exams and tests you include the breathing mark.